Hey everybody, welcome again to another exciting episode of the Crowdsourced Politics News Roundup. I'm your host and moderator, Cypher here, and today I am joined by Universal Discourse.
Hello?
If this is the first time you've joined the program, we are a funky little podcast born out of a funky little debate community from Facebook turned podcast, and what we try to do on this podcast is bring you kind of news analysis only the crowd can provide. On tonight's episode, we will be discussing a whole host of issues, including Afghanistan, the California governor's Governor Newsom's recall, among other things. And if you are joining us for the first time, all our shows are live call-in shows. You are able to join us via the Discord or a link that I can drop into the chat if you would like to get on video and have your questions asked and answered on air. If you are not the kind of person that wants to be on video or voice or video, feel free to drop a question in the chat and we will get to it when we can. The Universal Discourse, how have you been this from last week? What's going on with you?
Well, I had to relocate after tornadoes, and I got halted in transition. So I've been telling people I went out of the fire and into the frying pan, but I'm here and I'm streaming a lot. So hopefully I'll be able to continue to do that with some kind of stability and reliability. But that's what it is.
Yeah, I know that you had, and I'm glad
Plus
that you were
dealing
able...
with.
Go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Please continue.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I know that you've been dealing with the move and everything, and I'm glad that you actually finally got settled, more or less.
Well, I got halfway there. My destination was pulled out, so I'm actually have to have another place to be or something in 2 weeks, so I'm right back into the same situation. So.
I'm sorry to hear that.
This is America, COVID.
Right.
Yeah. And moratoriums. Yeah. So, happy to be here.
Well, I'm glad that we can give you some reprieve and that you enjoy doing this as much as we enjoy having you on. So I greatly appreciate you spending time with us.
Thank you. Oh, I love it.
Yeah. For me, everybody. Oh, hey, Quibbles. Glad that you were able to join us. For me, I been just working pretty much, trying to figure out information about different YouTube videos that I've seen through data science. Probably saw me post a list of top like comments and stuff like that on Twitter. If you follow Twitter, if you don't follow Twitter, go ahead and do so now. I try to tweet memes, and whatever the hell else I feel like. So yeah, go ahead and follow the Twitter. But with that, yeah, it's going to be some interesting stuff. We're going to be probably creating another stream, a monthly stream called Data Strain with an E at the end. And that will be a data science focused cast where I teach people how to do things in Python or the like, and also get into some of the things that data can do and things that it shouldn't do because it's irresponsible. Be on the lookout for that in the next couple of months or so. So without further ado, oh, one other thing, I did have a good time last weekend, so I am very burnt. I got a little bit of a tan, but that's what I've been doing, working, and was able to go swimming for a couple hours with some friends, so it was good times. All right. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the news. I don't think that's right. 1 second, y'all. I gotta open. Oh man, come on. I had to restart my computer before we started because it was lagging like a mother, and of course everything went away. All my stuff is now all my stuff is not wanting to work with me. Come on.
Welcome to live streaming. There it is.
So bad. All right. 1 second. I need to pull up. There we go. So on the top of the hour of the cast tonight, we will be discussing some world news. And if you all didn't know, you're going to hear it now. We are doing our basically first inaugural episode of Cypher State. Cypher State is a foreign affairs and policy focused podcast where we'll be doing diving deep into one particular topic or going lightly over a handful of topics that deal with international relations, diplomacy, and policy. On this week's episode, which will be at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, streamed here on Twitch and YouTube for the live stream, we'll be covering Tigray and what the conflict is happening in Ethiopia, why it's happening, and what it might mean for the region as a whole and global politics. So be sure to check out that stream live. And if you can't check it out live, be sure to definitely catch it up on your favorite podcast streaming service, where you'll be able to basically hear a little bit of additional information, a little bit cleaned up audio, because that's what people that listen to podcasts expect. So we'll go ahead and get into it. So, top of the newscast tonight is Afghanistan. So, Afghanistan. We need to figure this stuff out. Highlight yes. So, for Afghanistan, humanitarian crisis is unfolding in Afghanistan in the wake of the withdrawal of U.S. and allied forces on August 31st. The takeover of the country by the Taliban is complete, but the new government finds itself diplomatically isolated and cut off from foreign aid. Despite the billions of dollars in development spending over the previous 20 years, Afghanistan now finds itself in the epic economic struggle. Even before the final foreign troops left the country, Afghanistan was facing several crises. The following is reported from the Washington Post. The country is experiencing a severe drought affecting a third of the country and mass displacement of civilians. Now, 1 in 3 Afghans do not know where their next meal will come from. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said as the UN donor conference in Geneva got underway, the poverty rate is spiraling and basic public services are close to collapse. The people of Afghanistan need a lifeline, he said. After decades of war, suffering, and insecurity, they face perhaps their most perilous hour. Non-governmental agencies such as the United Nations are among the few remaining organizations equipped to deliver assistance to Afghanistan after Western governments and financial institutions suspended foreign aid that accounted for the lion's shares of the government's budget. The question of how the international community will prevent Afghanistan's financial collapse is among multiple quandaries posed by the Taliban's rapid takeover of the country. So, Universal Discourse, what is your thought about all this that was honestly pretty much expected to happen in Afghanistan in regards to the Taliban takeover?
Sure, it was expected. We all understand what things like power vacuums are, that kind of thing, geopolitical dominance, and we all understand that. And as expected, or at least I expected, China stepped up right away and targeted specific needs. It stepped up right away with vaccinations, for instance, aid, other kind of aid. And the kind of consensus up at the UN is that, this burden for this aid is really on the West. It's on the West.
Yudi, we lost your audio there, because I did something. Can you, what the heck? This program, man, I just tried to do a thing. Can you log out and log back in? Man, what the hell? So bad. Sorry about that, everybody. I screwed up and tried to control a little bit of her audio, and it made her disappear. So she'll be right back. In the meantime, I believe what Universal Discourse was getting at is that the Chinese government has come in, and they always wanted Afghanistan to be part of the Belt and Road Initiative, specifically because it kind of is a crossroads between Southeast Asia and Europe proper.
Okay.
So, Yudi, I'm sorry about that. Please continue where you had left off.
What did you hear? What was the last thing I said?
You were talking about how China came in with vaccines. Please go ahead.
Yes, they came in with vaccines. They came right in with what was needed right away, as expected. And the consensus at the UN is that this is the burden is on the West. The West caused it, and the West should have cleaned it up. The U.S. has only pledged 64 million. Total is 1.1 billion. China and Pakistan were the first to respond. But there's also the logistics that the Taliban isn't going to let just anybody come in with humanitarian aid. And that's what people don't understand. Why don't you just do this? Why don't you just do that? Well, it's not your country. You can't just do anything. You can offer, but they may not even let it come through, you know? But China is clearly like, oh, yeah, we got this. Yeah.
All right. So would you say that this is partly because, like I was saying while you were coming back, is that it's partly because of their Belt and Road Initiative? Or would you say it's a little deeper than that?
Yeah. No, it's straight up Belt and Road. Straight up. Straight up. There's no question. It's part of the plan. China's just waiting it out. And they're only taking it because this is something they've wanted to have for a while, and it's their. But then to call it, this is the dusk of Pax Americana, basically. The way the language is that they're seeing the fall of an empire. This is the dusk of the Western Empire, is what they say. An empire,
Do you think so?
There's a lot of propaganda behind it.
So you would say it's honestly that serious that we're seeing the fall of American empire, and we're seeing once again Afghanistan being the graveyard of empires. It's going to be that serious.
This is China's propaganda.
Okay.
This is the dusk of an empire. This is the dusk of the West. This is China's propaganda. Can it become that? Of course it can. Anything is possible. But I think that this last 20 years has been, it was a vast mistake in the first place. So, it could very well be the end of the Pax Americana, which has been hardly anything but peaceful. The UK is going to dissolve within lifetime. So it's not like America is going to dry up and blow away exactly, but losing its footing, oh yeah. Absolutely. And it was, don't go there or else from the beginning. And I went, found out the hard way. I guess somebody meant it, Man. It's true. But then China could mess up as well. You never know what happens. This is a lot of flag waving, a lot of posturing.
Oh yeah. No, that's 100% true. That the amount of manufactured consent that is going on is pretty outstanding, especially online when you have various interested actors playing that they're just like some regular Joe Schmo on the internet, and really they're either very much ideologically driven and aware of the situation, or they're just outright paid propagandist. I'm sure that I don't watch Russia Today, but I'm sure
China
Russia Today is having a field day with us. Max Blumenthal's been popping out the mouth in Twitter.
Russia doesn't have to say a thing. Yeah.
Right.
Russia doesn't have to say a thing. They just we'll let China do this. Let's have some vodka and dance. I don't know. They don't have to say a thing. They just have to rub their little hands together.
For sure.
Russia's having its own problems. So. But if you take all the language away from it, because I'm a linguist, I can just ignore it. There is always the reality. the humanitarian aid crisis. The Taliban want their country back. What are they? I mean, they're going to lose half their population. What are they going to do when they can't sustain their own country, which they don't know how to do? They couldn't do it before. So what is the question for me is, as expected, what is Afghanistan? What is the Taliban gonna do? Now, this is an opportunity. Everything has an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say that this time the Taliban wants to, I want to say, evolve ontogenetically. It wants to evolve. What might the Taliban ruled Afghanistan look like if it began to adjust its policies because it is confident in its power? It behaves as a sovereign nation in a global community. What would that look like? Because denying humanitarian aid, you're going to end up with another Eritrea. That's what I kind of see them doing.
Yeah, I could see that. I guess the best we could hope for, and it's not that good, don't get me wrong, is a Erdogan version of Afghanistan, or an Afghan equivalent of Turkey, I would say, under Erdogan, with the amount of authoritarianism that brings and the amount of Islamism that brings with it. But I could see that being a thing. We're already seeing the Taliban, beat people in the streets and things like that. So maybe even, or probably worse than even Erdogan. So more than likely, but I guess the best, like I said, the best that I think we could hope for is kind of an authoritarian Sunni dictatorship of a single party state, but maybe a bit
I don't think
more
so.
liberal than Afghanistan was under Taliban during the 90s.
I don't think so. This is a traditional historical form of governance. Has the Taliban ever not beaten people in the streets? I mean, are they as bad as ISIS? Not quite. Also, they were never the Ottoman Empire shrunk down and modernized. So those conditions and factors have never been in place and never will be. It depends on how orthodox the Taliban really are. This is a theocracy, and it will be an oligarchy. Will it be authoritarian? They tend to whack until you settle down a bit. And then it's a police state. Sharia. Possibly. I assume that's what they're... that is how they act and govern. So I don't think they're going to... In fact, their whole resistance was over not having that way of life challenged. I mean, essentially, they didn't want to be modernized and dragged into a one world economy under America. Anyway, so nation building, we talked about that. We don't build nations.
Right.
So I don't think they're going to be like Turkey at all. I think they're going to be orthodox. The way they position themselves is that they have new allies and they know who their friends are. And they're going to just conduct themselves accordingly. They might not even need to be making what we call a terrorist threat, because if they're not really feeling threatened, then why would they persist? ISIS, on the other hand, whether it had what it wanted or didn't have what it wanted, it kept on. So, what does Al-Qaeda itself say? Because remember, they had a falling out. That's what I want to hear. I'm going to go look at Al Jazeera and find out.
Yeah, that's an interesting point about Al Qaeda, and yeah, I don't know. Maybe it isn't me brought up an interesting point or question and said, "What are the Pakistan secret police / military going to do? How long will they let the Taliban go on since Bin Laden is not lining their pockets anymore in Pakistan?"
The link.
Which one link?
Hold on 1 second. Elizabeth is here. It's actually in the link I sent you. It's in the DM. Not you. Yeah.
We're going to have another person join us on the program. That's what is happening. Everybody that's watching at home.
Yeah. So she comes to my Discord naturally because I forgot I was sitting in the Discord. We're just having quite the day. Anyway.
Technology, man.
Yeah. So yeah, no, it is an interest.
Hold on a second.
You're on stream, so could you like?
I'll mute you. There, I muted you.
Okay.
We shouldn't be able to hear.
Got it.
Oh wait, I can still hear her. What the heck? Why isn't anything working? All right, I'll mute it on this end. Go ahead. You can go ahead and tell her.
Would be able to get on in a minute.
There we go.
Yes.
Okay, it's all good.
New room I've never been in, so had to learn this one.
No, that's fair. I'm pretty much the only person on Twitch that uses this. It's a program I found looking up for solutions for what I wanted, and apparently no one likes it, but I do. So we're going to use it when I can until I pay out the wazoo for a better one. So thank you for joining us, Elizabeth.
Did I kick UD out?
No.
Okay.
No.
I don't see her. I was like, wait.
You don't see her on your. What are you not on yours? You only see me. Interesting. No, I have everybody. So can you hear Yudi? Yudi can say something. Can you hear Yudi? Yudi can say something.
I can only see you and me.
Weird. Okay. I see everybody. See, this is okay. This just proves to me that I can't use this program like at all anymore ever again. Crap. All right, everybody just go
Twitch,
over to my Discord.
Anyway,
we'll just use my Discord if that's okay with everybody.
Can someone just message me what it is because I'm new to all this?
Okay, we can do that because this is a good conversation. Okay, no problem. You have to invite Elizabeth.
Yeah. Can you? I'll send you.
All right, we'll back out.
I'll send you. I'll send you the invite link and then you can give it to her because I don't have the. I don't know who she is on Discord. Sorry about the technology problems, everybody, but this is why I'm going to pay for a different program rather than using this free stuff to do what I like. And yeah, it's what it is. So, open panel. And here.
Go. We just need to get Elizabeth an invitation. There we go. We just need to get Elizabeth an invitation.
Exit. All right, I'll send it to you, Yudi, and right now.
Oh, okay.
There we go. There's the invite link. All right, and then I guess got to get the podcast info up on here. Oh, today is just not.
This is going to take a minute. We are
virtual camera.
We are in. What room are we in? Okay.
Oh, just tell her to join into the voice one rooms, and I will provide.
So okay. That's actually extremely difficult. She has to have an invite. Yeah.
Say again.
She has to have an invite to your Discord.
Yeah, that's what I sent you the invite privately, and then you can send that to her because I don't know what her Discord name is, and then she just needs to click. Once she joins in, I'll drag her. Once she gets in.
No, I got all that part. It's just trying to get it to her.
Okay.
She did. Okay, there you go.
And I'm assuming
Joined.
that
There you go.
You will be off camera due to your system setup.
No.
Oh, okay.
Should
You
I
just need to turn it
can
on.
if I can, well, yeah, because I'm already streaming, so it's gonna virtual camera this thing. Hold on. Oh, we got to stop to do a whole new setup. That's basically what's going on. There we go. I can do that. I'm trying to. What is the name of this Discord? Is what I'm trying to find out. CSP podcast. Okay.
Yeah, she won't be able to see that. So, okay, hold on. There she is, Elizabeth001. All right, she's a member. Tell her to join the Hangout channel.
Yeah,
And
I
then I'll
can't.
invite her.
Okay. So,
I got
you
it.
have to. I cannot do that. Okay. All right. Here we go. I can't stop what I'm doing to communicate
Yeah,
through.
I just messaged
sorry.
about it. I just
Yeah,
didn't
there you go.
realize.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Well,
And
thank you
This
for the invite.
is Cypher. This is one of your
there we go.
comrades.
All right. So, everybody, I greatly apologize for the technological difficulties we were experiencing. I don't know why they couldn't see or hear each other, but you could hear and see everybody on my side, so that was an issue. But now we've got it. Yudi will be off camera until she turns it in. Right? You can't turn it on.
You have to have virtual camera. You can't turn your camera on and off while you're already streaming. Yeah.
Right. So because she's co-streaming, she will be off camera, but you'll be able to see the light ups in the top left-hand corner and when she talks on screen. So we should be good. Anyways, Elizabeth, please introduce yourself to the audience. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do? And then we can continue to talk about Afghanistan and move into China.
So I am another veteran. I was 35 Fox, 96 Bravo, depending on your eras, all source analyst with a background in linguists, but never made it. Happily so. And I've spent 3 years in Afghanistan after I left the Army. I currently am a research assistant with UD, and that's how I got here.
All right. Well, I am glad that you were able to join the program. Is your primary interest in international relations, foreign policy, or is it more domestic kind of thing? What's your interest in politics?
My current interests are more domestic, but my background is international terrorism.
Okay. Yep. Similar background to myself. I was at 35 November, so I'm sure you know what that is. And yeah, so I'm glad that you were able to come on. So I don't know how much you caught of what we were talking about. We were trying to kind of determine where we might see best case scenario, most likely case scenario of where Afghanistan will go in the next 5-10 years under Taliban rule. And then how China is kind of shaping that and that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm. I was having supper, so I didn't catch any of that, but I am aware of your conversation, what you're going on with.
Sure. So what do you think? What do you think would be the best case scenario, and then followed by the best case scenario but still likely, and then what do you think is the most likely scenario that we will see coming out of Afghanistan next, we'll say 5 years?
So a best case scenario, I'm going to actually start with my most likely scenario. You look at the Taliban coming in 94 through 2000, they locked down Afghanistan from outsiders. Red Cross gets kicked out, other NGOs get kicked out, wellness groups. They very much insulated the country. Most likely, I see them going back on that path for Afghanistan. Having external connections, of course, they're looking for legitimacy that they did not have before. For instance, best case scenario would be in seeking legitimacy from outside international countries, we see them slowly reopen in 5 to 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to allow for more influence, slow influence. Nothing quick, but slow influence, little changes over time. That's the best case.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
with China, I want to say, I'm going off the top of my head here without notes, 2014 bought the mining rights from the former government, I want to say. And so China's
Sounds right.
protecting an investment is what they're doing right now. They're protecting their access to the rare earth minerals that are used in technology. So in trying to legitimize the current Taliban and armed government, that's what they're seeking to do. Is they're seeking to protect their own their own investments.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
More than fair. I agree with that too. Yeah. Oops. Didn't mean to do that. All right.
Okay, tech-wise, no, there's no camera possible, but audio is perfect. I can see everybody, and it's cleaned up pretty nice. So there we go. We did a salvage mission.
As we often have to do with technology. But yeah. Man, like I said, that was what you didn't hear. Like I said, I think the best case scenario, we see a slightly more liberal Taliban, and by that I mean probably along the lines of maybe girls can go to school up until high school, maybe or maybe just middle school, maybe 7th grade or something. I'm not saying that this is likely. I'm saying the best case scenario of what we could possibly see.
I think two things. One, my question before we crashed was, what does Al Qaeda have to say? Second, China's able to move in quickly in more places overseas than the U.S. because China does not care about your equality or your human rights. Does not care what you do. China makes a more advantageous partner for the majority of nations in the world, especially those who are struggling to find footing and keep footing in an utopian mill global economy. So they're going to do better. If they do better and they're a better ally, Afghanistan does have this chance to somewhat evolve. When they're very confident and they think they have control, they do tend to say, as Elizabeth said, they loosen controls. Do they want to grow organically, spontaneously, naturally, in their own manner, as if there were no 20-year war? In other words, what were they in the middle of trying to become before this happened? We could see that their position before this happened was a full rejection of the West. China loves that, right? It's another Boxer's rebellion for them. If China is the dominant flag to the Middle East, that's in ancient history, that's the way, that's more like it was from the beginning, which is going to satisfy the, you want to call it the historical aesthetic of the entire area. So then you have India and China being a kind of a triad, two legs of a triangle against whatever is left. And of course, Russia, with its constantly fluctuating ability to manage its own deficit of resource, finally being able to say, well, we don't have to be the bad guys, and we can lay down and relax and handle this. So they've been there for hundreds and thousands of years together. They know how to work better together. Are we worrying about how Afghanistan handles its equity? Why are we worrying about that?
What do you mean by that?
Why are we worrying about that?
Well, when you
If
say
that's our
say
concern,
Afghanistan handling its equity, or do you mean like in
it's
terms
equity?
of
It's human rights.
Okay,
it has what we call inequity. Okay.
Gotcha.
So why are we worrying about that? What are we doing there? Here's your big reveal. What was the U.S. doing there? Because the public sees it one way. The government has its own agenda. So we're about to find out what was really behind it all. That's what's going to be the worst thing for us. And they're, I think, going to be doing much better. Because China's finally arrived. Okay. Unless something happens to China. Hmm.
I could
For
see,
instance,
you go ahead.
would Orthodox Muslims also see China as trying to modernize too much, trying to change things too much? Nobody can challenge the power and authority of these governments, the imams and their prophets and their religion, and nobody can challenge the power and authority of that. Nobody. Not even China. So I think China may not do as well as it thinks it's going to do, but I think that the Middle East, that we call the Middle East, Afghanistan, is going to do much better than anybody ever realized. We'll see. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I think Judy, I think you're correct. One thing, Elizabeth, if you could mute yourself when you're not talking, your fan is picking up a lot. Your computer's picking up a lot of your audio. Thank you. So we had a couple of questions or comments from Maybe It Isn't Me and some of the other chatters saying Maybe It Isn't Me says that I see it being slightly more extreme Saudi Arabia, like treatment of people, especially females, disabled people, LGBTQ plus other among them, and also that things that Afghanistan has going for it and maybe China might want a piece of is lithium, opium, and gold. So I think that those are fair points as well. One of the things that's kind of started this conversation a little bit was asking where we see Pakistan in the mix, and I think Pakistan here primary interest in Afghanistan is to be kind of a backup state. If anything were to pop off between Pakistan and India in a serious manner, they would need a fallback place to go to. And a lot of the reason why they have the Taliban or had helped the Taliban is in order to give them that ability to do so, as well as project force into India and be able to say that, hey, that wasn't us, that was the Taliban. They hit us too. Why are you blaming us? So I think that the ISI, I don't remember the exact naming of that. It's a security service of Pakistan. That's their primary purpose with this. Now, the Haqqani network in Afghanistan was very much a product of the ISI. However, they've in recent years, I'd say since 2010 or so probably a better part of a decade, they hadn't had as much control over the Haqqani network. And Haqqani, the person that's in charge of the Haqqani network, is also the interior minister of Afghanistan now. So that is another monkey wrench in the gears there. So we're going to see a lot of things happening within Afghanistan around these different international community and players, especially with Pakistan and China. And I think that's something that we'll all have to pay attention to and be not necessarily overly worried about, but a little bit worried about if you care about these kind of issues. I think we talked. Oh, go ahead, Liz.
I was going to say, it is also in Pakistan's best interest to keep a good relationship with Afghanistan. To remember the Durand line, the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan is actually a destabilizing border. You have Pashtunistan and Baluchistan as two major areas that would, at times, love to be independent of both. But Pashtunistan has not tried in the last couple decades to be free, but Baluchistan has. Right. Baluchistan is Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Iran. So for Pakistan, it is in their best interest to keep a stable line there. And also, going back to the 70s and 80s with the war with Russia, everyone went to Pakistan. So if there's a major destabilizing event in Afghanistan, everyone flees to Pakistan as refugees. That is then destabilizing possibly in Pakistan. So that is another thing to remember with those relationships. It's sometimes in Pakistan's best interest to try to keep it stable as possible.
Their relationship is obviously there's a compatibility there. Pakistan itself is struggling. So what would happen if Pakistan et al. went ahead and had a mutual pact or a sort of a merger, if you will, a confederacy with Afghanistan. Because India is a big threat to everyone, even Australia.
I mean, what do you mean by threat, though? Do you just mean as a growing industrialized base?
The way they do business, they have their own brand of terrorism. Okay, they have their own politics going on. So the way they play ball, all right.
Like Hindu nationalists and that sort of thing is what you're getting at.
It's the way they do business and the way they've been doing business. For instance, Adani, they're for no reason. Let's build a giant coal producing complex in Australia. Oh yes, but that will destroy the barrier reef. Sorry about that, but we have coal to burn, for instance. So they do things like that. Okay. The way they ally themselves. Utterly strategic. You never know where they're coming from, who they're with, who they're against.
Interesting.
And they have an agenda that baffles everyone. We don't know. We don't understand India. No one does.
Gotcha.
But we know they're friends with China. You have an unknown on the board that you've never dealt with before.
No, I think that's very fair. And I personally am not very well versed in India politics and the like, so I can't really comment further. But you definitely given me food for thought on that. So
China also has international relations where they've been very friendly to multiple countries across Africa, for instance, where providing infrastructure, for instance. They're playing a long game, and they know it.
Yep.
Whatever the goals are on this long game, they know. China, knows what's going on with this.
Exactly.
And what each individual entity can give or do for China in the long run.
Yep. Ghana gave them the deep sea port, and Ghana is full of gold and cheap building material, for instance. Ghana's incredibly progressive.
It's also a way for, and this is going to probably sound bad, but it's a way for China to export its excessive male population because of internal strife that is going to end up happening when a massive amount of men cannot find wives or work within Chinese borders. Every single project that China has done during the Belt and Road Initiative has been primarily dominated by Chinese national workers, and they've gone like they're setting up these kind of soft power relations by having their workers provide anywhere between 40 and 60% of the labor force within the country. So the majority of it, they start off providing 80%, and they whittle it down to between the 40 and 60% range, depending on the level of expertise of the project, or how much they want to have direct control over it, how much bitching the host countries have. Internally, they're playing this really good game, but they're having this kind of soft power relation happening by the cultural exchange that happens naturally when you have people immigrating to an area, as well as the marriages that happen from these. You see that in specifically a lot of rich Chinese men are going to Eastern Europe to find wives, specifically Ukraine. They had their own Who Wants to Marry a Billionaire show, and it was all Ukrainian women. I know I should it's just ridiculous how ridiculous, as much as this sounds, this is very much what is happening, and it's not a thing that a lot of people know about.
Okay, but China doesn't recognize extramarital children, for instance. They do very much like colonial England and France. You can marry her and have children, but we're not making them Chinese nationals. Are you out of your mind? So what's the benefit? What's the benefit to anybody? Not really. They don't do political marriages the way Europe is known for at all. They don't mind if they're frustrated men go somewhere else, but the toll that takes on the men themselves, you have no idea how humiliating it is. Also, if you're going to send the deal of a lifetime, 40% of Chinese labor, as hard as they work, legendary? What about your local populations needing to work? Would it be not very long before you suddenly had an anti-immigration resistance happening in Afghanistan? We don't want any Gastarbeiters here. Get rid of them. Wait a minute. This is our country. We need our own jobs. What are you doing? I don't think Afghanistan would make them move I don't think they would accept that parlay. What they want are deep sea ports and ease of shipping routes and security.
Yeah, for sure.
Correct.
Yeah.
If the men are satisfied by extramarital union, okay, well then that's less drama that we have to deal with. But you see, what every move they make, all the things they don't address in their own social management, yeah, those are just going to spread. They're carrying the kernels of dissent as they expand. They're not willing to realize that. They're very dismissive about things that trouble them and make them look bad. They're very dismissive of that. So, the board is being set with a lot of rubble.
Landmines all over the place. Yeah.
Landmines all over the place. So in the next 10 years, this is going to be a brand new situation, an ahistorical situation.
Interesting.
Really, really interesting.
Yeah,
Not interesting in a way that it's a good thing, but just like a horror show is what I think is going to happen. But I am curious to see what happens when China really rolls its policy tanks in. Let's see what happens. They rule at a distance. They expect allegiance and loyalty, and they want tithing. They remind me so much of ancient Egypt.
The one thing with Afghanistan that may tolerate Chinese labor is there's a lack of infrastructure for the mining, which is what they want to do. So to bring in the people who can do the mining, to bring in the equipment, there will be a need for that, amendment. So I don't see that being a problem. It's definitely interesting when you see in Afghanistan how the Hazara are treated, and in China how the Uyghur are treated. You see this very strange bedfellows when you realize, though, that each country can do it independently, not like the other, and still try to get something out of this. Because what does the Taliban get out of having China for bedfellow?
Infrastructure for sure. As long as they do a temporary labor contract, which they kind of never do, because once they send you over there, they don't want you back, especially if you're married and have children. You represent us over there. You be a good citizen. And that happened in the U.S. too. So, but Afghanistan would offer you one with its right hand, its left hand behind its back, and then out comes the shit.
But Afghanistan, the Taliban government for 2001 was never recognized.
Yeah, of course.
Afghanistan can gain international UN recognition this time.
That's right. They can get on the global international community for the first time. Yes,
so that's something. Why would they allow this? If they're playing their own long game, international recognition means they can say no more invasions because they're their own government. They're now a sovereign country and be recognized by multiple international entities.
However, they don't care about the international community. But that is true. There are Orthodox.
After 20 years, I think there's an.
No, I don't think so. Their long game was to win this back, and they are Orthodox, and they're not giving that up because it would disrupt the entire culture, everything they fought for. But to have the status, yes. But
I think there's. Go ahead. I'll let you finish.
They could easily have that status revoked, and it wouldn't bother them a bit.
I think that you are both correct in this, and the reason I say that is because some of the top leadership wants the international recognition and clout the openness to the international community in order to actually develop Afghanistan, in which would bring them prestige within the country and give them more legitimacy. But some of the rank and file people might want to just go back to where it was in the 90s, where women are slaves and they have their little plot of land and everything's good. Like in their mind, like they don't care about anything else.
That's right.
So I can see that, and to me, a lot of culture is actually top down, And so, depending on how unified the Taliban leadership is, could end up pushing that to the lower rank and file.
Yeah, it's
I'm not sure how well it will, but that's the way I look at it. Yudi, please.
Once they get the seats back, they're going to carry on that old argument, orthodoxy versus modernization. So really the question is, regardless of what anyone else does, can the Taliban get itself into a consensus as far as its own direction? Because the people who had the control and took control back are orthodox. How much concession toward the modernized world, international community, would they be willing to make? Well, they won't do it when they're in a unstable, when they have instability and a lack of security. They've just now back down. So let's see how they do. They immediately imposed an orthodox government, like as if nothing had happened, showing no signs that it would be acceptable to be in any other direction, because that's their victory. They can't take it and then say, we were just kidding about all that. We're going to start opening this, doing that. No, they would lose face. And that even China understands. How are they going to conduct themselves? Everybody's wanting to see. That's the first piece of this puzzle, so that we have to wait to watch. And I don't know how long that's going to take, because their voices change. It depends on who has the talking stick at the moment. Yeah. So everybody's waiting to see. They're very willing to help, but they have no idea what these leaders really are going to decide. Or even if their whole long term was just to get it back. That's as far as they had. That's as far as they went. That's as far as they are. They're not going to suddenly turn around and cooperate. Play nice. They know they can exist without any status in the international community. China wouldn't mind if they didn't have that status, so it's not going to push that. It's not going to come in with, I'll do this or else, because it never does. So the first piece is when Afghanistan begins to talk about its goals moving forward. What does it really want? And of course, we're not going to get the truth. So I don't know how much propaganda we're going to be hearing from them.
For sure.
Posturing. So how are we going to know? They don't allow journalists, so okay. That's it. It's going to look like a Muslim China. That's what it's going to look like. But what it actually is, no idea.
Interesting.
Well,
everybody, I think we've covered Afghanistan, China pretty extensively here. For those that might just be joining us now, this is the Crowdsourced Politics News Roundup. We do this every Thursday from 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to roughly 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All our shows are live call-in shows, so if you would like to join us, you can join the Discord, ping me, and we'll get you in so you can then get your question asked and answered live on air. If you're not the Discord type, or if you don't want to be on air, you can drop your questions or comments in the chat, and we'll get to them as we can. We are also going to be doing our technical inaugural episode for Cypher State. Cypher State is an international relations and policy focused podcast that will happen on the third Sunday of every month, live on Twitch and YouTube. After we get the podcast recorded, cleaned up a bit, it will then be published to pretty much every single podcast streaming service out there by the fourth Monday of every month. So be sure to check that out in your favored medium, and we hope to see you all there. Now, we spent the last hour or so basically going over kind of international stuff, so we're going to get on to U.S. politics. I think the first thing that we should cover is the Newsome recall. For those that may not know, Governor Newsome had a successful recall petition against him and successfully defeated it, overwhelmingly so. But there's things that we can talk about with this and how that might play out for the larger political conversation that's happening in the United States, specifically because of who the top contender was on the Republican side, Larry Elder. Let's see. So the attempt to unseat Newsom was first recall election in California in the 18 years. And while there was a point in time where Newsom's chances to remain in the governorship mansion looked dicey, was able to pull out the win, I have to say. Newsom's win was projected by the Associated Press less than an hour after polls closed, with 62% of the ballots counted and more than 2/3 of them voting no on the recall question, while also leaving who the next governor question on that ballot blank. Newsom addressed his supporters in Sacramento. Quote, "No is not the only thing that was expressed tonight," the governor said. "I want to focus on what we said yes to as a state. We said yes to science. We said yes to vaccines. We said yes to ending the pandemic. I'm humbled and grateful to the millions and millions of Americans who exercise their fundamental right to vote and express themselves to overwhelmingly by rejecting the division, by rejecting the cynicism, by rejecting so much of the negativity that defined our politics in this country." Oh, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think this means anything for the larger political discussion? Do you know much about Larry Elder and his past? What happened in government? What? Go ahead, Yudi. You're saying. So
What's the most interesting is that what they did is instead of choosing the backup candidate for this, they just skipped the second question.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think that has everything to do with politics and democracy. Somebody exercised their democratic rights, like in a way that gave this result directly. So that's really like, really? Wow. So almost half didn't have the choice for the replacement candidate, for instance. So somebody did something very effective campaigning to get them to do that, right? I haven't seen anything like that before. Have you? Has anybody else? I've never seen anything like that.
No.
Okay, so something's going on, right? I think that's incredibly interesting. Is the recall? Are we going to become a recall culture? Because immediately the Democrats pushed back by going, "We're going to make this much harder." That was way too easy for this to happen.
It was like they needed less than 1% of the people that voted in the last governor's race of signatures to get on the recall ballot. Like California's got something like 32, like it's some ridiculous number of people living in California, and they needed like 132, one out of every 32 signatures. It was beyond absurd, honestly. Less than 1% was required. It's just ridiculous.
So they basically did it by saying, "You've got Newsome or Elder," and they chose Newsome, and if not Elder, and they went Newsome or nobody,
right?
and did it. That's exactly what they did, and that's exactly what happened.
Go ahead.
28 percentage points, historic. 28 percentage points. It went down. The recall attempt against him went down by 28 percentage points. Wow. Wow. What kind of voting is that? Like, holy, I'm like, I'm actually, what, you exercise your constitutional rights in this case? You could have, I mean, what does that say about the presidential elections? What if, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you saw that kind of initiative and strategy, I mean, oh my God, it's kind of mind blowing. I gotta admit it. And even me, I'm not really political, but that's kind of mind blowing. You know,
it's pretty interesting that the number one reason people gave for the recall, the reason the Republicans pushed it, why it was successful, was that the COVID restrictions were too strict, right? They said that Newsom overstepped his authority by shutting down restaurants, bars, going outside. No one shut down going outside. There was some parks shut down because they didn't want to spend the money on staff to try to enforce social distancing. So they shut down some of the parks. You might be able to say that's a little overboard or whatever, but it was done with good intent, and it wasn't that restrictive, at least in my opinion. But with what people said in exit polling, they said voters were very concerned about homelessness, about the wildfires, about crime, and the economy. However, only 3 in 10 voters had any mention of the COVID restrictions being too strict. I think the Republicans just hitched their horse to the wrong wagon. I think they should have hammered crime. I think they should have hammered homelessness.
But then Newsome was, they had a recall on Newsome specifically because he made COVID restriction too difficult for Californians.
That was the number one reason given during the signing of petition for the recall, was that the COVID restrictions were too strict.
So like he's a bad guy for that? I mean, like, you see what I'm saying? Like, it baffles logic to understand that.
And then they're talking about the vaccine mandate and how that's like the biggest kind of violation of civil liberties ever.
So who were the majority of petitioners in this case?
What do you mean? Like, specifically,
somebody had to sign the petition and meet a quota. So who were the majority of the petitioners in this case? They demanded a recall.
I know it was mostly Republicans. I think it was pretty much all Republicans. But I don't know the numbers. I don't know I don't even know if a breakdown of who the signatures exists, to be honest with you.
So, but the party that did it, in other words, so this is their version of take back the state, or that's what they thought was going to happen here. Right? Yeah. So, so that says something about the nature of the people in California. The majority of people involved in this, who responded to the recall of the 9, 11, 12, 13 million people, evidently have been tallied, I think, so far. They had 9 million and then another 2.4 million, 9, 10, 11. Okay, let's say 11 million people who responded to the recall. With a third of them with that no selected candidate at all. Okay, interesting. So I want to know the demographic of this.
Yeah, I'd be interested to look up that too. I'll probably look it up after this cast. I wasn't terribly interested in it because I knew the ideology that was behind the recall. That was what I was primarily concerned about. It is interesting. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. They had it before in 2003, but only 8% pulled that strategy. You know, for instance. So Californians, evidently, they're used to this. You know, mostly Democrats who did this. Evidently. So it's the Democrats that got strategic and then turned around immediately to try to make it more difficult to do this. So, wow. I mean, I think that's the most interesting thing about this is the response of the public, the citizenry themselves. I mean, it's like they're trying to play a football game, and the field is California. Incredible.
The low bar, though, I was just looking that up because I was only following it after the recall was requested. It is extremely low.
Mm-hmm.
Just 65 voters to begin the petition process. And you need 12% for the actual petition. Signatures must equal percentage of the total number of votes. 12% for executive officials, 20% for state legislative and judges, and 1% has to come from at least 5 counties.
Yep.
But for California, for the amount of people there, that is like jumping over a threshold. You can step over it easy.
You could kick a rock and make a recall happen. So no surprise the Democrats would push back on that. They're going to have to make it a whole lot more difficult to stop that because... go ahead.
I was going to say, especially with how much it costs, $276 million to run
for
the election.
For that little bit of response. Whew.
Here's ABC News did a breakdown of percentages. Let me see if I can get that on screen. They have... I was hoping it was a map. It's a table. Never mind.
Yeah.
Where's Sacramento? Sacramento. Number of verified signatures in Sacramento, 94,000 in Sacramento. That is really low.
Mm-hmm.
The total numbers verified, total valid signatures was 76,000 for Sacramento County.
Mm-hmm.
That's bananas. What's Sacro?
Yeah.
But go ahead and I'll look up how many people.
So this is what the new little Stop the Steal GOP's big move. I mean, and how are they going to keep pushing at it? I mean, oh my God. If there were ever a reason to end bipartisanship, this is a good one. Oh my God.
5% of people in Sacramento wanted a recall. It was there's 1.52 million people or 1.55 million people in Sacramento County.
Mm-hmm.
So that's bananas.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, it's pretty remarkable. Is it a trend? I don't want to see this anymore happening.
I don't think it will be because there's not recall. There's not the ability to do recalls in every state, and a lot of states have a much higher threshold. I think people saw an opening with Newsome because he wasn't very well liked even by liberals at the time that the signatures were started, but they didn't like any of the Republicans either. So they chose their more favored candidate. But the threshold, since the threshold was so low, they could just do it on just Republican voters. With other states, I don't think that's possible, especially on like off year and having to go get physical signatures from people and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more concerned with the gerrymandering that's coming up, to be honest, and the constant beating of the drum of that every election is stolen. While that will make less people that are Republican vote, it might also up the ante into violence, because if people feel there's no hope, then they'll turn to the one thing they can do, which is kill people. And that's what I'm worried about going forward.
Gerrymandering?
Gerrymandering, because Texas gained a seat, and it was mostly Republican states that gained congressional seats during the census.
Yeah. But how is that going to end up killing people? What's going to happen?
No. Okay, so I said I am more concerned with. There are two separate points. So I'm more concerned with gerrymandering leading to Republicans being overrepresented in elections because of the way that you can stack, crack, and pop districts in order to get the most efficient share of voters that are pretty partisan right now. And in addition to that, I am worried that Republicans' constant refrain that every election is stolen will raise the ante into violence, because when people feel like there's no hope, they'll turn to the one thing that they can do, which is murder people. That's what happens in a lot of other countries, is when they feel like they can't win politically, they'll try to win through violence. And we've seen similar instances in recent American history back in the 90s of militias recruiting. This is actually also under Obama, and with domestic terrorist attacks involving people like
I see. This is another. All right, so that'll show up on our radar pretty quick, huh, Elizabeth?
Yes.
We'll know. Proud Boys. We'll know it pretty quickly. Will they resort? Well, yeah, they're making a game out of resorting to violence. So
there's already been some stabbings at some of these rallies against vaccine mandates and that sort of stuff. So
I got it. Yeah. So if there's another, Stop the Steal type thing, coup thing in Texas, which wouldn't take much, to be honest. You might. I wonder if Texas would. What is it? Leave the union?
To see, I mean,
Yeah,
that's
see.
something that state is proud of. Is
Please
well,
don't.
it's against the national. Well, it's illegal nationally at the federal level. It is still one of those bylines in their constitution that they can do it.
Yep.
And they're proud of it. Former
Yes.
Texas resident for a short time, not my own volition.
True. I
Yeah.
lived in Dallas. Yeah. Exactly.
What I would say, and I live in Georgia,
Mm.
which has shown when people, even with gerrymandering, realize it really broke hope for a long time here with voting. And this past couple of elections, not just presidential, but even before, has shown higher turnouts, even with people who don't want to be disenfranchised anymore.
Right.
And what we're seeing here is now laws trying to be passed, passed and now trying to be overturned. You can't even provide water in some of the worst areas. You're trying a 6-hour wait to vote.
Yeah.
There's only one polling station. The people in those districts, I believe, seeing what happened in this last presidential election, will double down, even with the gerrymandering. More people came out for the second election for our senators, I believe,
Yeah, I noticed
because people realized it could change. It almost like reinstated hope where there's been gerrymandering. And I see what's going on in California, same thing. People got, it took such a low bar to come into a recall. People came out in force, realizing something was being threatened to them.
Yeah.
No, that's very true. We do have a comment from YouTube saying Trump saying it was rigged the night before. This is back to California, just as he did in Georgia. Hurt Elder along with the Dems. Perfect commercials. Every one of them featuring 45 and Elder together. Okay, I see what you're saying there. So yeah, I do agree with that.
Hey guys, I'm at Laserway. I'm about to get some laser hair removal. I do it because it's quick and easy, and most.
I had a tab open and it started auto playing a commercial. Hold on. Sorry about that, everybody. I had a tab open that I was going to read some news from, and it started auto playing commercial. So you had a little bit of some laser hair removal there.
Oh yay!
Crap.
That's what.
Anyways, sorry about that.
That'll fix it all.
But yeah, so for that comment, I do believe that is true. But I also worry that it's a perpetuating cycle where people will drop out, and then because they're losing so much hope, liberals tend to not gravitate towards violence, but people that are a little more like me oriented do to an extent. And so that's what I'm concerned with. White nationalist terrorists are a thing. There are other groups that do commit violence, quote unquote Antifa, but the level of it seems to not be as much. Now, then again, if this happens, then we could see, Antifa fighting Proud Boys, blah blah blah, raising the stakes there too. So that's why I'm concerned.
If they get their way, they don't do that. I don't know. Yeah.
No, if they get their way, they don't. But if they don't get their way, that's my concern.
Well, it seems to me like, though, in that group, it has this agenda that it's pushing anyway. So you would see a rise in open displays of, it would look like Sharia law in the U.S., where you had all these little deputies running around.
True. So
I think the way they behave, they police communities. They think they're there to clean up the streets and stuff. They do things like that.
Sure. I think we covered the California recall election to a good extent. Talked about a little bit of other things. I think one of the interesting things that's coming up now is that the debt ceiling and budget are coming to around this time of year every year for the last 20 or so. So the debt ceiling is the statutory limit on how much the government can borrow to pay its bills. In 2019, in a deal reached between the Trump White House and Democratic congressional leaders, the debt ceiling was suspended through July 31st, 2021. with an eye towards avoiding an ugly budget fight before the 2020 election. The deal was considered bipartisan at the time, with both parties giving ground. That deal raised spending by $320 billion as the deficit approached $1 trillion. The widening deficit at the time was due in part to increased government spending and the $1.5 trillion tax cut package signed by Trump in 2017. Budget deficit rose significantly under Trump. When he became president, the national debt was $19 trillion, and as of 2019 had reached the $22 trillion. Now we are beyond the July 31st deadline, and the fight over the budget ceiling is in full swing. If the budget ceiling is not raised by Congress, it could create an unforced error resulting in America defaulting on its debts, potentially catastrophic in outcome. We saw the playing of chicken with the debt ceiling in 2014, 2016, etc., with the filibuster in the Senate. And those concerns are still around because this is one of those situations where I believe the debt ceiling can be filibustered. The results would be catastrophic, mainly because it would increase the level. It would show that the U.S. doesn't actually pay its debts because it wouldn't have the cash to do so. The Fed can't just give people money. It has the ability to, but doesn't have the authority to do so, and therefore would lead to an increase in interest on future borrowed capital, which would increase the price of all goods and services within the United States due to that, because either A, taxes would have to be raised, B, the interest rates on loans by the Fed, or as the Fed interest rate would have to be raised in order to deal with the fallout, or C, cut in spending, future spending, which is what Republicans want. They want to see spending cuts all the time, and leading to a cascade effect of less money circulating in the economy. What are your thoughts?
It's out of control, the deficit. So what happens when a nation with that much going on has an out of control deficit? It's run up its credit cards and it's maxed out.
Well, I mean, the government can't max out, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. What normally happens? I mean, you have Band-Aids all over the place that you can put on, but you'd have to massively restructure the whole system to get that thing under control. Like emergency measures are being sort of strongly suggested right now, you know?
There's a lot of inefficiency in our budget as well, even inside different departments. You know, as a veteran DOD, it is notorious of how incapable the branches can talk to each other on their own equipment, because everyone's got their own stuff and they don't talk to each other. It would be cost effective if we had one communication system that worked across, but we don't have that. Everyone wants their own slice of the pie, so everyone creates their own. And this isn't just in DOD. You know, interestingly, we just left our most expensive war of recent times. So in theory, you know, there's a lot of money right there not being thrown away, to be thought about. But honestly, in my adult life, I have never seen this come out well, because my adult life has been with 2 wars.
Exactly.
And our budget has just never been anything that we could do anything with. It's always been either a shutdown, which has happened multiple times. Or the, what is it called? I forgot the word. Where they don't pass a budget, but they sort of kick the can down the road and don't shut down either.
Continuing resolution. CR they basically just say. How long do we have those? That happened every year between like 2013 and 2016.
Correct.
Which is fine. I mean, it's not fine, but it's better than the alternative, which is government shutdown or not raising the debt ceiling. The debt ceiling shouldn't exist. The majority of countries in the world basically say we pass our budget that's our ceiling. Like, you don't have an additional vote about trying to relitigate how much money you're spending. You said you're spending this money, you're going to spend it. So if you don't have the money to spend through taxation or cutting spending elsewhere or whatever, you just borrow it. And that's just how most governments operate. That's how the US government operated until, I want to say, it was the 90s. I think it was the 90s. I mean, I'll look that up real quick, but go on, share more thoughts.
Yeah. Now that, they won't be spending however much trillion over there in Afghanistan. You know what I mean? Okay, well, that's one expense that they can take off the table. But they're also calling for things like, they're saying that Social Security is too generous. Then they want to lower the age, which means more payouts earlier. So it's going to be a fight, and the two parties are going to use the budget as an excuse to keep fighting and pull more nasty business. But yeah, the war money is back in the coffers. Okay, so what's going to happen to that, right? If we had enough to cover that, how do we recover ourselves after an expensive loss like that? And America doesn't have any new opportunities. Doesn't have a new market to explore. It has what it has. Plus, you have competition from China. So,
the idea of the restructuring is definitely needing to be done, because it's one of the other inefficient parts of our budget. If different sections may be overfunded temporarily, and they'll just spend it to spend it.
Yep.
There is no way of going like, hey, I didn't need as much, let me put it back in the coffers. So I don't see DoD giving up this budget easily. I mean,
no.
The F-35, is anyone aware of what's going on with that project?
Sunk cost, man.
Sunk cost that just got extended, I believe, contractually. And sunk costs are a thing. You have to accept your sunk costs. You can't recoup spent money, but we really need to restructure, because currently it's been since 2001, the scream has been, we need a bigger defense budget. I'm just going for what I know in my background. Not saying it's the only one where we're hemorrhaging money, but the fear is always, it's just been used by fear. It's either, do you want Social Security or bigger defense budget for our war? And I really think it needs to be relooked at. Where's the money going to? And that's what 2012 happened with the lockdown, with the shutdown. A lot of things got relooked at in the DoD and the contractor world. A lot of stuff got like, wait, we're hemorrhaging. Just needs to happen again. Not a shutdown, but just that look, that critical look.
Yeah, they say in the military, if you don't use it, you lose it. So they will be justifying some recipients or departments are going to be justifying justifying the budget expense and then justifying continued need for. So they're going to have to cook up a reason, right? So I think that's the first thing you're going to see is a whole bunch of reasons, because reasons, and they're going to be pretty ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And I wonder again, what do citizens have? What role do they have, and what power do they have in that process? Because I don't know if they can directly challenge because reasons. Maybe that's something that will change. Finally, it's like, excuse me, what are you doing with this money? You need how much for what? Military spending is infamous. Household screw, when I was in, cost $147.23 per screw.
Oh, I remember those days. If you had budget over at the end of the fiscal year, the amount of pins we would buy as units just to spend it.
The price would go, they wouldn't buy by that. They would just up the price on it. And they would change the nomenclature to justify it, that it was a instrument, a screw.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like if you literally had a screw loose, that could cost us millions. So now my screw, single 1 1/4 inch screw, is $147 per unit.
Yeah.
And the unit quantity was 1.
The reason that happens, it's so absurd. It's like, because if the federal government apparatus doesn't spend the money, it just gets cut from the budget next year. And so there's no like, you can hold this money over and you don't get it cut. It gets instantly removed from the budget, and that's why this happens. It's dumb. There's no incentive to cut cost. There's incentive to not cut cost in case there at some point you need more bullets, for example. You know, you have a year where your unit just exceptionally bad at shooting, and so you need more bullets. And that's actually happened in some instances. When I was stationed in Korea, they had, for whatever reason, they had less people assigned to the unit one year, and so we had to go out and just blow through our ammunition, or we weren't going to get the amount of ammunition that we needed the following year when we had more people. And it was just stupid. It's just dumb. I do want to correct a thing that I had said. I had said that we didn't have the debt ceiling until the 90s. That is kind of true. So there was a debt ceiling established prior. It was established in it had existed as part of the United States government for a very long time, but in 1979, Dick Gephardt imposed what they call the Gephardt Rule, which is a parliamentary procedure that stated when the budget is passed, the debt ceiling is raised to match it. That was then repealed in 1995. So that's why I thought it wasn't until the 90s that we didn't have this issue, because from 74 to 95, it wasn't an issue. And this is one of those situations where it existed because there wasn't much, but prior to this, it existed because there wasn't much debate over budgets. And then that was one of those instances where you could have a debate on the budget. But since, the 70s onward, you had budgetary debates happening. And now you have this additional debate on the budget again, and it just causes problems.
Yeah.
So, okay, do you have anything else? Do either one of you have anything else you want to say about the debt ceiling and government budget?
No, it's a disaster. It's an economic disaster. I don't see that anybody has a grip on the situation. So I think we're all just going to go bankrupt. I mean, especially after COVID. I mean, America rebounded after COVID very, very extremely rapidly. How did it do that? Then it withdrew from war. Okay. I mean, it's got the potential, but with the bipartisanship, no. They're just gonna run it into the ground, right? Because they're all multi-billionaires over there with overseas money, and divvy it up and sell it off as garden park property, and put game preserves and fountains on the damn thing, and have their little churches springing up everywhere. I mean, it's definitely undermined. These political divisions undermined everything that America really was supposed to be. And, letting the budget explode and running it into the ground is so typical of kind of like, what do you call those landlords that do that? Slumlords. Because they want the new peasantry. Yeah. I mean, look at the way Amazon is and hires. And I mean, all these corporations hiring slave labor, practically breaking your back. And you want the job, don't you? And all of it, you have to stay over, or, I mean, what? Get out of here. What right do we have to accuse somebody else of labor violations and human rights violations? So let's just keep that going. And all of that adds to the sort of very typically Russian GOP that we have. They behave exactly like Russia does, because I believe they've been coached. So I don't know if that side has any intention of fixing the budget. They're not playing ball. They're absolutely against the nation as it was, before they put their clown in office. And so it's a different kind of coup. It's a capitalist coup. There you go.
And it's going to take a cultural shift, like we talked about, internally. I mean, we've all seen it in DOD. It's the same across all the departments. Was I reading recently, even NASA between Florida and Maryland will not talk about their projects because they want to get the budget internally. So they have to divvy it up instead of working together and coming up with cost-effective ways. We punish cost-effectiveness. We, instead of taking any department and saying, hey, you saved money this year? Thank you. What is your budget next year and why? Why are you asking for the same money? But, instead of rewarding cost effectiveness, you punish it. And, if you're looking a year, 2 years down the road, it doesn't work that way. It's terrifying for these groups to be like, if we don't use it, we lose it, which is the fear. it's an internal fear that really the whole culture of it needs to change to address this.
Not losing it if you don't use it creates a situation you're constantly indebted as well. It's where the incentive is to create a deficit so that you remain dependent, and that gives the control back to the grantor, whoever that it may be. It's like a hard money lender.
Mm.
It's a tactic.
That's a good analogy, honestly.
Well, tell me it's wrong. Look at anything in the last 20 years and tell me that's not exactly. I mean, it's like it's like somewhere between the hard money, a loan shark, and a drug dealer.
So the only thing that I would like to say on this topic is that the United States government has the capacity to spend more. We're seeing that happen with the COVID relief. We're seeing that we should see that happen with the infrastructure bill and the human infrastructure bill that should be happening within the next 3-4 months or so being passed. I don't think it will have negative impacts on the economy at large. In fact, I think it's going to be boom times. But so I'm not entirely worried about this fear mongering over debt and deficits personally, but I understand why people are, because we still live in we still have people. Well, taxes don't fund spending per se, but they do help fund spending. So I understand the concern. I think we talked about this topic pretty extensively, and I wanted to get into a couple of the other topics. We have about 20 minutes left on the cast or so. So we have the Texas quote unquote heartbeat bill and the General Milley reveal that happened over the last couple of days. Which one would you like to tackle first?
I don't think women actually care to talk about abortion online, actually.
That is fair.
From what I can gather, there was some flack from attempting to bring it up. I think somebody had said, why don't women just sit and talk about the impact of it to us? But Elizabeth, anything you have to say, go ahead. I will refrain.
I would rather refrain on that as well.
Okay.
I'm sorry, crowdsourced.
I'm good.
Extremely touchy, and unfortunately gets very emotional very quickly, which you do not make rational decisions and you do not make rational arguments. And
we as we say on Twitch, we say stupid stuff on the mic as a result. So great apologies to the audience and to CPS Cypher who works his butt off, with CSP Nikki who works her butt off. But let's just leave that on the table as the new narrative and pick it up next time.
No, for sure. I will give just a brief update for people that might not be aware, and we won't have to get into the particulars of it if that's okay. So that acceptable? Okay. So let me get to my notes real quick. Just an update. So Travis County District Judge Karen Crump, who oversaw the hearing, found that, let me back it up. According to the Dallas Morning News, a Travis County judge on Monday issued a temporary restraining order extending Planned Parenthood's protection from anticipated legal action to be filed by some abortion opponents under the state's new abortion law. Travis County District Court Judge Karen Crump, who oversaw the hearing, found that the new restrictions create the threat of an imminent harm for Planned Parenthood plaintiffs and violates the Texas Constitution. Temporary restraining order preventing women's health clinics and known abortion providers from being sued under the new abortion law was granted earlier this month. The order, signed by Crump on Monday, extends the protection until the trial that she set for April 4th of 2022. So it is... Just have to get that small update. That is some good news out of this, but we do understand that we don't want to talk about the ramifications, that sort of stuff. So, but I felt that update is probably lost in most of the news that people might be watching.
Good.
So feel that should be said. So let's go on to Milley.
Good.
Would either of you like to bring up what happened with with Milley, General Milley?
Go ahead.
All right.
I was actually just reading the articles to brush up to make sure I was up to date on what's going on. So you can go ahead. For
sure. So according to Bob Woodrow and Robert Costa, there has been an explosive revelation that Joint Chiefs of Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, had phone conversations with Chinese counterparts to assure them that Trump wouldn't pop off the handle and start a war. In the book, Peril said that in the days before the 2020 election, Milley acted to prevent a potential conflict with China. The book said Milley's received intelligence that the Chinese officials believed the U.S. was ready to attack them. To diffuse tensions, Milley called the head of the Chinese military, General Li Zongqin, I think that's how you pronounce that, and told him that the American government is stable and we are not going to attack. Quote, if we're going to attack, I'm going to call you ahead of time. It's not going to be a surprise, Milley is quoted as saying. We're not going to have a fight, Milley told him, according to the book. Lee replied, okay, I take you at your word. Trump railed into Milley in the statement, calling the general a dumb fuck, and the details of the story fake news. For the record, I never even thought, okay, I can't do it.
You just did. Don't do it again. I'm gonna have flashbacks. Oh my god, that was awful. Oh my god. Okay, go ahead.
I never thought of attacking China, and China knows that. The people that fabricated the story are sick and demented, and the people who print it are just as bad, he said in the statement. The book is set to release on September 21st, also recounted a phone conversation Milley had with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi after January 6th violence at the Capitol, which Pelosi blamed on an unhinged Trump. Pelosi said in January that she spoke to Milley about preventing an unstable president from initiating military hostilities or accessing the launch codes and ordering a nuclear strike. Quote,
what?
I can guarantee you take it to the bank and there'll be that the nuclear triggers are secure and we're not going to allow anything crazy, illegal, immoral, or unethical to happen, Milley told her, according to a transcript of the call obtained by the authors. The president alone can order the use of nuclear weapons, but he doesn't make the decision alone. One person can order it, several people have to launch it, he said later in the conversation.
Okay, right.
So this is one of those ridiculous situations where General Milley did the right thing, but this can have repercussions going forward. And all three of us are ex-military, so I think that all three of us can give our own inputs on this with our own.
All right, you're gonna hear it. This one.
Yeah, so I definitely wanted to cover this. Elizabeth, please go ahead.
So this is sort of two different things, two different topics.
Yeah.
Both General Milley, yes. The first one is intermilitary relations with our foreign national partners and foreign national militaries, and when we don't formally partner. Mm-hmm. That is something we are, he would have done with multiple militaries to either assuage fears, to try to keep calm. We often do announce our attacks. Look at World War, look at OEF, look at OIF. We did not go in silently in any of our recent conflicts. So for him to say that goes with what the U.S. military has done ahead of time of attacks. The second one can be a massive killer of your career in doing the right thing, but it's going, what did we used to call it? Unlawful orders. It would be him declaring launch codes to be an unlawful order. Therefore preventing the entire chain, or anyone in that chain preventing it, declaring it an unlawful order. Yes, it is career suicide to stand up for yourself and stand up for what's right at that point, because you're standing up against your boss.
The entire nation.
Well, especially at the launch when it's only the president, you're standing up against your boss and saying that's unlawful. Yeah, it's career suicide to do the right thing at times, and that's one of the scary things you have to consider at that point. For him, individually, I mean, he's probably coming up on retirement age. What's the worst that's going to happen? Let's be honest. He's at the right place to be making these calls. He is not risking much with that. If he were to make a call like that, is what I'm trying to say. Is he, what? He doesn't get a retirement. I'm betting he's got a pretty nice bank account as a general. But these are two different things. One is military to military relations. The other one being possible unlawful orders, seeking out where it could happen. And I think you should look at it as two different problems that way for anyone reviewing it.
Judy, go ahead.
I just don't even believe it. I was in the unenviable white cell where we were the ones that had the codes that launched the missiles. So we know how those codes get executed. Anybody that would just go call a general in China and go, we're going to attack you, shh, don't tell anybody. And a Chinese general going, okay, I take you at your word. I just don't believe it. I don't believe a word of it. I don't like the guy that, that is commenting on it, but I don't believe a word of it. It's just not how it happens. It's not the kind of cover-up. It's not the kind of statement you make. It's, if it were true, I could read the guy's book, but I don't believe a word of that. That's not how this happens. It just isn't.
Yeah.
In any way, shape, or form, not remotely. There's no phone call. There's no whoops. Nobody. Oh, we retracted the tweet that said we're going to go to war with you. Everybody in the world knows the U.S. has never at one point, not even him, ever said once, oh, we're going to war with China. What is this? So I actually don't believe that even happened. I don't know what the book is all about. I'm going to have to read it. But that's outrageous. An executive doesn't have his thumb on a button. The president doesn't have his thumb on him. It's not like Reagan getting Alzheimer's, waking up, pressing the wrong button, and we all go boom, like in the 80s. That's what they were afraid of. It just does not happen that way. And it's so complex and every tier, from the minute one of us executed the code and actually turned the keys that opened the clamps from the top of the executive branch, is so convoluted and twisted. China knows that couldn't possibly be the case. So it's like, well, did China just claim that they got this call? And then the guy felt like he had to call because, when that guy was in office, the orange, there were plenty of calls. No, he was just kidding. No, that's propaganda. They had to cover his butt the whole time. He would do outrageous things. So he himself complicated it to the point where no, you can't believe anything. But this one, I flatly don't believe. The man would have no. I actually just don't believe it. I know what it takes to launch a nuclear weapon at somebody, and I don't believe it. And it would be even harder now than it was when I was punching buttons. So that's my whole take on that. It looks like a typical let's cover his butt because he does stupid things, but I'm dying to see the book. And I would need absolute, I'd need a document in front of me that was an unrestricted security clearance to even consider the plausibility of the entire thing. That's my actual take.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think it's fair. I don't think the phone call conversation between Milley and the Chinese counterpart happened exactly as it's quoted. I don't think that's how it happened. I could see that this being a phone call and be like, hey, nothing's going to happen in 12 days. Calm down. It's just not going to happen. I know that you see all this shit that's happening over here, but no, don't worry about it. And there was an instance where Trump responded to Assad with the chemical attacks, where the Air Force was warned ahead of time, and so some of the planes were moved, and then the positions that they bombed just hit a couple of planes and nobody died. And so I could see it being a similar instance to that, of being like, hey, we're going to hit these things because we have to get your people out. I could see that being the kind of warning that was being given. Something
like that. Yeah.
with the nuclear thing between Nancy Pelosi and Milley, I 100% believe that conversation happened exactly as it said, because Pelosi is the kind of Pelosi and the kind of Democrat that she is were immensely worried that Trump was going to do something stupid in order to remain in power, because he just tried to foment a coup, right?
That's true.
And so she calling him, be like, yo, like, what the fuck? What are we going to do? And then him being like, slow your roll. There's like 80 different people that have to like sign off on this thing. It's not just the president. President gives the orders, but there's like 80, 90 people or whatever that have to like go through the whole process. We won't let anybody launch a nuke for no reason. And that being the kind of thing that happened there. The concern that I have is that I don't necessarily like the precedent that this might set with generals becoming policy creators to an extent. The reason why MacArthur was shit canned is because he was going to just march the entire U.S. military into China and take over China, and against Truman's orders. And that's why he got shit canned. He was brought in and made to apologize, and fired basically on national TV at the time, or national broadcast, in order to assert civilian control over the military 100%. And so I worry, and this probably could be because of media diet, how much times this comes into like movies and stuff where like the generals know what they're doing, this president is corrupt, we're taking over and going to give it back to the people. Like, I don't like that. I think that's very dangerous. And so I see it as both ways. And I don't think General Milley himself is in the camp that I'm worried about. But I worry that the precedent might be set for someone else that has a lot of clout, a lot of pull with troops, could eventually get there. So I'm concerned about that.
You actually have a very founded complaint, and it's been going on for a while at SecDef level.
Oh yeah.
And you see how many people have been waived their time between military service and serving SecDef when they're supposed to be a civilian in charge. Yeah. Also, I feel this is revealing to the public how worried the different branches were about our former president. And it is very questionable, because if this continues for each one forward, but like you also have to look at like what brought it on. So you almost have to like wait a couple years into this current presidency, see what goes on. Do we still have the same problems? Was this a new precedent set that's problematic, or was this just responding to a very turmoil put time?
Yeah, I lean towards the latter. I lean towards it being just a one-off incident because we had somebody so out of their depth. We'll say charitably out of their depth.
Why are we being charitable anyway? But anyway, yeah,
that's true. But I try to be fair sometimes. So, but Trump was just
okay.
So
a liability.
Yeah, there we go. Liability. That's a good way to say it. So that's where I lean towards. It's just a worry I have.
So the worry is that you think a general independently somehow is going to have the power to declare war and launch a nuclear weapon?
No, I think that the defying of a president in that regard might be problematic.
The military has the liberty to do so.
Not real. It's not. I mean, it can, because
it was in my contract. It has it black and white in there. If the president acts in such a way, the executive issuing the orders acts in such a way that contradicts the military's own mission or the overall general welfare in some heinous way that the military is vehemently or diametrically opposed to, then it may stand down and refuse to comply with impunity. Yes, we actually have the right to do that.
Yes, but I'm worried that clause has to exist for
because of people like
Trump, but also because somebody might
generals.
there might be a time in which American fervor for war might be so pitched that it goes beyond what it was after 9/11, and then somebody wants to launch nukes. That's going to take a person to say no, and so that would be an unlawful. And to me, that would be an unlawful order. Launching a nuke it shouldn't happen. Like, it's there for deterrent effects, but if it ever come to it, like we're launching nukes, I'm like, no. Like, I would straight up be like, no, you'll have to kill me. You'll have to take the
American people cannot exert any amount of pressure that would convince any sitting executive to sign off on launching a nuke. And if they did, and the military said no, and you just mentioned the one who was pulled out for that exact thing, that happened with him as well. So when Clinton had tried to make the gay people in the military, he tried to make it legal or whatever.
Don't ask, don't tell.
No, that was the result of it. He originally said, no, it's legal. Okay. So, yes, you can't restrict gay people from entering the military. So the military's response was they enacted that order and said, we refuse. And he didn't know what to do. He didn't think they could do that, and they could. Somebody had to tell him, yeah, they can do that.
Yeah, see, that's the kind of stuff that I'm worried about. I don't like that. I think it needs to be it needs to be more restrict about what they can and can't say in that regard. And there needs to be repercussions for going beyond that. Like I said, to me, Milley did the right thing, and I think people that they're praising him are correct about it. But there's other instances where this is being, where there may be other instances where it's not as black and white as this, and that gray level area needs to be tightened. Is my concern.
I don't think that the military should be compelled to wage war in a system like this, where we have one individual and some old men in the room, and they command the entire army with a piece of paper with a pretty seal on it. And if the chiefs of staff say, we don't want to fight this war, we just don't. This is a dumb idea. We're not going to do it.
Yeah,
I mean, they're still citizens, even though they're under UCMJ.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, that in that regard, it should be things. In my opinion, it should be things like mass desertions. It should be like with Trump. I honestly think they should have invoked the 25th Amendment.
I think that what they should do is any executive order regarding going to war or taking that final solution type approach, that has to be definitively a consensus decision, or it's not possible. I think that's what they should do.
Yeah.
If there's any dissent, it's a no. Any dissent is a no.
Right.
It has to be unanimous. If they made that the rule. Go ahead.
I hear you, Cypher, on the worry that future military leadership coming up in the ranks right now will see these actions, and basically what it sounds like you're worried as a coup. A CC. To use the Egyptian president. Just the idea of, like, I know better and I'm now going to just take over. It's the slippery slope of an argument, which, is not a straight line ever, and it's usually very rarely actually going to happen. It's, I think, less than 10%, even if each step's 90% likely to happen, to get from A to Z. But it's the slippery slope of generals now defying the former president and doing political calls to other militaries, and the future of a general saying, fuck it, I'm just going to have a coup. I'm done with this.
I just don't see that is a slippery slope, which is irrational. It's completely illogical.
I'm not concerned about coups per se. I just don't like the idea of the military itself being the final say on much of anything outside of things like mass desertions or the like. Like, if you're going to take a principled stand, it needs to be a principled stand publicly. So that's why I think when this happened, when they were worried that Trump was going to foment a coup, they should have done the better thing to have done would have been like backroom deals or backroom calls to people to assuage fears. The right thing would have been would be go on national TV and be like, I believe that the president is erratic and irrational, I am going to push my fellow compatriots to invoke the 25th Amendment. Like, that's the kind of thing. That's the way I see this. Like, I don't like the backroom stuff, because the backroom stuff,
But I mean, that's what happened. Also, in any kind of military initiative, it is protocol for the commander, the Joint Chief of Staff responsible, to contact the other one and confirm or deny. That's what you're supposed to do. So what he's saying is that, with this fool, I actually had to do that, and this is how ridiculous this was. And
yeah, and that's why I say Milley. I'm not worried about Milley. I'm worried about if this sets a precedent for people to do it in things that they themselves believe is like unjust or shouldn't be followed, and how that might impact future political leanings and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Not leanings, it's politics and foreign relations and all that stuff. Like, you don't want somebody to do that. And I think that if this was done out in the open, I wouldn't personally have as much of concern, because then everybody knew about it at the time. That was a principled stand, and it was done in public.
But that's not really what he did. This was normal. He's hearing, we've heard that you're gonna you're fixing to arm gear up. What's going on with this? He's responsible. This is his obligation to call and say, no, that's not the case. We don't. And then he can't really tell the truth about the guy's a nutter, so he has to come up with something else. So I understand the concern. I actually don't think that concern is pertinent to this case whatsoever. He did exactly as the protocols demand. So I think the concern is separate from this period. And could you have a general that has that much power? Only if you had a very, very weak president, or a president who was sort of in cahoots with the guy in the first place, and that's totally that's plain old corruption. Sure, you can have that.
Right.
Yes, you can have that. So yeah, I mean, all of that's possible. Yeah.
Well, I hate to do this, but it is now 10:05 Eastern Standard Times, and that is a wrap up of the news roundup. Thank you everyone so much for joining us. Without the viewers, without y'all, we'd just be a couple of few people shouting into the void that is the internet. We do this for you, and we appreciate you joining us. Please be sure to check out the news roundup every week, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Every Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, unless something happens and I can't do it. We are also going to have the Cypher State episode 2, happening on this Sunday, September the 19th at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we'll be talking about Tigray. If you want to be part of the community that is the Crowdsourced Politics community and the Crowdsourced Tribune, go ahead and join the Discord, link coming at you below. If you do Facebook, if you don't do Discord, but you do Facebook, we also have a Facebook group called The Commons that is part of the Crowdsourced Tribune. The Crowdsourced Tribune is a nonprofit media organization that houses this podcast, as well as a writers guild and our group. So please go ahead and find us on Discord, find us on Facebook, or wherever you get your podcast. Universal Discourse, please go ahead and shout yourself out.
Okay. Well. You can find me on Twitch at Universal Discourse. I have a unique stream that covers all things indigenous and quantum, but also decolonization, counter-extremism. I do debate coaching, conflict resolution training, which I'm opening up all week. I'm a veteran, so I deal with a lot of veterans issues, but from an indigenous point of view. So, come on by and visit. We have a thing called a medicine circle. It's where you can sit in the circle and lay your burden down. And our goal is to make you feel better than when you came in. We stream 7 days a week, and I'll be on the Cypher State episode about Tigray. And Elizabeth is someone who actually works with me in my research, so I'll let her introduce herself, and I hope you see a lot more of her if she's willing to hang out with us weirdos up here in live stream.
Thank you again, Yudi. Go ahead, Liz.
So thank you very much. I do not stream on my own yet. I am often on Yudi's stream, though, when I'm able, and working with her, and it's an awesome experience. And thank you very much for having me on this as well, Cypher.
Appreciate you coming on. You're more than welcome to come back anytime. Just let me know. Basically, you saw the Discord, you saw the setup, so you should understand how that works. And if anybody else would like to be part of the News Roundup, part of Cypher State, or any of the other projects that we are having, hit us up either on Twitter, Discord, Facebook, wherever you can find us. And as always, everybody, keep your head up through the political storm.
Bye.
All right. Thank you guys.